Welcome to the extended version of this lesson on 3-act structure. We just covered what acts are, why they're useful, and how they relate to other concepts we've learned. Now, let's dive into a more visual way of picturing 3-act structure, how it separates two important parts of your story, then solidify our knowledge with an in-depth example of the 2001 courtroom comedy Legally Blonde. In our last mini-course, we explained how character arcs are a visual way of tracking the protag's internal change throughout the story. So you might be thinking, is there a visual way of tracking the protag's external change? In other words, their success and failure. There's actually an early version of this idea pioneered by author Kurt Vonnegut, which started as his thesis in anthropology. It's often called the shape of stories, and he outlines it in his book Palm Sunday. To summarize, Vonnegut tracks characters through popular stories from beginning to end on a scale between good fortune and ill fortune. He graphs out the events and labels them as either good or bad, and once completed, he has a visual representation of that story. For example, here's his visualization of Cinderella. I'm sure you can see the similarity between this and our visualization of character arcs, except here, instead of tracking internal change between the character's flaw and need, we're tracking external change as they get closer or farther from their goal. Up is still positive, down is still negative, and left and right are beginning and end. But whereas character arcs are a visualization of the B story, this is a visualization of the A story. And in 3-act structure, the shape normally looks like this. The protag spends Act 1 flat because they haven't determined their goal. When they commit to it at the start of Act 2, they usually struggle, succeed, and then fall to their lowest point. And at the start of Act 3, they recommit and shoot back up to success. We use the term up, down, up to describe this motion, and to be clear, this is broad strokes and doesn't cover the finer details of the protag's success and failure. The important part of all of this is that you can use 3-act structure to visualize each section of your story. Act 1 is flat, Act 2 is bumpy and falls, Act 3 is straight up. If you're a visual learner, this will really help in the next course as we tackle our story model, Universal Story Language, since it follows this shape closely and is rooted in 3-act structure. Finally, let's quickly touch on a concept we'll explore throughout the coming lessons. 3-act structure is the easiest way to think about something we call the new situation. This is sometimes referred to as the world of Act 2 or the antithesis, and it describes the new situation the protag enters when they transition from Act 1 to Act 2. In Act 1, your protag is usually in their familiar situation, and when they go through the external change between acts, they enter an unfamiliar new situation. In Moana, this would be the change from Moana's familiar island home to the unfamiliar ocean. There's usually a stark difference between these two worlds, which helps highlight the start of the journey, and the protag often returns home at the end of the story, near the end of Act 3. So 3-act structure can not only help you visualize your story, but it can also help you separate the start of the story from the start of the journey. Now, let's see 3-act structure in action with our in-depth example.
Legally Blonde is a 2001 courtroom comedy that follows Elle Woods, a sorority president, as she tries to win back her boyfriend by following him to law school. However, the more she studies, the more she realizes just how much she breaks the stereotypes people expect of her for being blonde. And this movie can help us understand 3-act structure because it contains 2 clear act breaks and follows the up-down-up motion of the protag's fortune. To start, Act 1 shows the protag in their regular world until the moment they commit to their goal. Here, Elle Woods is her sorority's president and set to marry her boyfriend Warner. That is, until he dumps her. Now, hopeful to win him back, Elle decides to impress Warner by following him to Harvard Law. And after checking off the pre-qualifications, Elle officially starts her goal of winning back Warner at the end of this phase when she heads off to Harvard. The break between Act 1 and Act 2 involves a large external change. Here, a driving montage shows Elle traveling from Los Angeles to Cambridge, which is not only a literal external change, but is highlighted by the differences between Elle's fun campus back home and her stuffy new campus at Harvard. This is also the moment the protag commits to their goal, as Elle is officially heading to Harvard to win back Warner. Also, notice how this relates to the idea of the new situation, since Harvard is a much different campus than the one Elle is used to. Act 2 shows a bumpy path with a big up and a big down as the protag goes after their goal. Here, Elle struggles to fit in before buckling down and starting to excel in her classes. This climaxes in Elle earning an internship position for one of her professors, which shifts her goal to winning the case. But our big down starts as Elle refuses to give up Brooke's alibi, is hit on by her professor, and vows to go back home to LA. In her lowest moment, Elle receives advice from one of her teachers, which leads her to her epiphany near the end of Act 2. In the break between Act 2 and Act 3, the protag undergoes a great internal change and recommits to their goal. Here, Elle walks into the courtroom in her signature pink suit, marking her recommitment to her new shifted goal of winning the case. This also highlights her internal change in two ways, since Elle has discovered her need of conviction and shows this by going back to help Brooke, but also wears a pink suit, marking her change from trying to be someone else to the conviction of being herself. This is also a great example of the idea of synthesis, which Blake Snyder talks about in Save the Cat, as this pink suit fuses her old pink self with her new lawyer self. Finally, Act 3 shows the protag rising up to victory. Here, Elle successfully wins the case when she uses her beauty knowledge to catch a witness in a lie. She then completes her goal of winning the case, and as for her old goal of winning Warner back, she turns him down, finally realizing she is too good for him. Legally Blonde is an excellent example of 3-act structure with clear moments to mark act breaks. Next time you watch a movie, try to spot these act breaks to get a deeper understanding of 3-act structure.
That covers our extended lesson on 3-act structure. The idea of 3-act structure is something we talk about a lot, and is a foundation of our structure model, universal story language. This lesson should get you more than equipped for the concepts we're about to cover soon. But if you're interested in this topic, check out Sid Field's screenplay to learn more about 3-act structure.